Queen Zixthalia Mevdoroth III, supreme ruler of the Crystalline Empire, was having what humans would call a really bad day. "What do you mean you can't find me a suitable protector?" She chittered angrily at her chief of security, whose translucent antennae drooped in embarrassment. "I have an entire galaxy of warriors at my disposal." Commander K-Rax shuffled his 4 pairs of feet nervously, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light of the 3 moons through the palace's transparent walls. "Your Radiance, we've tested candidates from 47 different species. The Graxstar warriors were too aggressive and kept challenging your ministers to duels. The Pix monks were too passive and spent all their time meditating. The Voraxians," he shuddered, "well, we're still cleaning up that mess from the throne room." Zixthalia, or Zix as she secretly wished someone would dare to call her, slumped in her crystalline throne. Being a 7-foot-tall insectoid queen with natural armor plating and psychic abilities didn't make her immune to headaches. "There has to be someone suitable. The assassination attempts are getting ridiculous. Yesterday, someone tried to take me out with a poison space taco." "About that, Your Radiance," Krax cleared his throat, "or whatever passed for one in his species, our intelligence suggests it was actually just a regular space taco that had gone bad. The vendor has been appropriately disciplined." "Oh." Zix felt a bit embarrassed about having the poor vendor thrown into the palace's pit of milled inconvenience. "Have them released. But my point stands. I need a protector who is capable but not overly aggressive. Someone intelligent but not prone to philosophical discussions about the meaning of protection. Someone who can think outside the box but not so far outside that they end up in another dimension." Again, it was at this precise moment that the palace's emergency broadcast system crackled to life. "ALERT. Uncarnal Desacel approaching, classification primate, or Wigan, Earth, Piloti, Apers to be Gunsian." The Royal Chamber's main view screen activated, showing a small transport ship performing what appeared to be barrel rolls while its pilot broadcasted what Zix's universal translator identified as Cotton Eye Joe at full volume. "What in the name of the 7 crystal moons is that?" Zix leaned forward, her compound eyes focusing on the ship's occupant. A human male in what appeared to be Hawaiian shorts. A t-shirt reading "I'm not flying, I'm falling with style," and a baseball cap worn backwards. "That, Your Radiance, is Jake Thompson from Earth. He appears to have accidentally entered our space while trying to make a delivery for something called Space DoorDash. He penetrated our defense grid, avoided our automated security systems, and reached the palace while making a food delivery." "Yes, Your Radiance. Apparently he thought our royal defense matrix was, and I quote, some pretty sick special effects, bro." Zix watched as Jake's ship completed another perfect spiral while he sang off key. The ship's navigation was impeccable, even if its pilot appeared to be operating on a completely different plane of reality. "Bring him in," she decided suddenly. "Your Radiance?" K-Rax's antennae twisted in confusion. "Anyone who can breach our defenses while singing Earth country music and delivering fast food clearly has either incredible skill or incredible luck. At this point, I'm willing to take either." Minutes later, Jake Thompson stood before the crystalline throne, still holding a bag of what his delivery app claimed was plutonian pizza. It wasn't. He looked around the grand chamber with the kind of casual interest one might show a moderately interesting screensaver. "Dude," he said, addressing the queen of the most powerful empire in 3 spiral arms, "your palace is like, totally rad. Very vaporwave aesthetic." K-Rax nearly fainted. Nobody addressed the queen so informally. Nobody called her dude. "Nobody, thank you," Zix replied, finding herself oddly charmed by this human's complete lack of pretense. "How would you like a job?" Cool, Jake nodded, then paused. "Wait, what kind of job? Because if it's like my cousin Eddie's business opportunity, I should warn you that those essential oils weren't really essential to anything. I need a personal protector. Someone who can guard me against assassination attempts while maintaining a certain atmosphere of unpredictability." Jake took a bite of the now cold pizza he was supposed to have delivered 3 star systems ago. "So like a bodyguard, but for a giant bug queen. That's pretty neat. Do I get health insurance?" "You get access to technology that can rebuild your entire body from a single cell." "Sick. That's way better than my current plan. I had to pay extra just to cover my left arm." He thought for a moment. "Quick question though, do I have to wear one of those fancy uniforms? Because I've got this skin condition where I'm allergic to looking professional." Zix found herself doing something she hadn't done in centuries, laughing. "You can wear whatever you want, as long as you can protect me." "Oh yeah, no worries there. I did security for a Chuck E. Cheese for 3 weeks. If I can handle suburban moms during a birthday party riot, I can handle anything." And so began the most unusual partnership in galactic history. Jake's methods were unorthodox, to say the least. He thwarted the first assassination attempt by challenging the assassin to a dance-off, claiming it was ancient Earth custom that all conflicts must be resolved through competitive dancing. The would-be killer was so confused that they tripped over their own tentacles and fell into a decorative fountain. The second attempt was foiled when Jake introduced the concept of pranking to royal security. The palace guards were initially skeptical about replacing their quantum disruptors with glitter bombs, but it turned out that covering assassins in holographic sparkles made them extremely easy to spot. But it wasn't just his unconventional security methods that changed things. Jake had a way of making the normally formal palace feel more like a home. He introduced movie nights, though explaining why humans would willingly watch films about alien invasions to an audience of actual aliens was challenging, taught the royal chef how to make tacos properly this time, and even convinced Zix to try something called Casual Fridays. Rax watched all of this with a mixture of horror and fascination. The ancient protocols were being completely ignored, yet somehow the palace had never been safer or happier. One evening, as Zix watched Jake teach some of her guards how to do the worm, a dance move that her species found particularly hilarious given their resemblance to actual space worms, she realized something had changed. She didn't just feel protected, she felt understood. "Hey Zix," Jake called out, using the nickname she'd always wanted, completely unaware of its impropriety. "I want to learn the Macarena. It's historically proven to unite species across cultural divides." As she stepped down from her throne to join the impromptu dance lesson, Queen Zixthalia Mev Doroth III knew she'd made the right choice. Sometimes the best protector isn't the strongest warrior or the wisest sage, but rather a human in cargo shorts who believes that every problem can be solved with either a dance-off or a well-timed practical joke. The story of the alien queen and her human protector was far from over. There would be more assassination attempts to thwart, more cultural misunderstandings to navigate, and definitely more questionable Earth music to endure. But for now, in a crystal palace floating among the stars, the most unlikely friendship continued to grow, one bad dad joke at a time. As it turned out, teaching an entire royal court the Macarena was just the beginning of the cultural exchange between Jake and the Crystalline Empire. The real adventure began when the annual Intergalactic Council Summit approached. "So let me get this straight," Jake said, lounging sideways in a chair that was definitely not meant to be lounged in sideways. "You've got to convince a bunch of stuck-up alien diplomats that you're a serious ruler, while also showing them you're strong enough that they shouldn't mess with you." Zix nodded, her antennae twitching with anxiety. The summit is crucial for maintaining peace, but it's also where most monarchs face their greatest political challenges. Last year, the Nebula Queen tried to have me demoted to Princess of Small Rocks through a legislative loophole. Harsh. Jake munched on what he called a space burrito. Really just regular burrito ingredients wrapped in a glue leaf from the palace garden. "You know what you need. A power move." Rax, who had finally learned to stop flinching every time Jake put his feet on the royal furniture, raised an eyebrow stalk. "A power move? Yeah, something unexpected that shows everyone you're the boss. Like when I worked at that mini golf course and wore a T-Rex costume to deal with roadie customers. Nobody argues with a dinosaur holding a putter." Before Zix could respond, the palace AI announced, "LERT, diplomatic vessel approaching. Classification, incredibly pretentious." The view screen showed an ornate ship that looked like someone had taken a Baroque palace, added rocket engines, and covered it in so much gold that it probably violated several laws of physics. "That would be Ambassador Vex Pompous of the Ariat Dominion," Rax sighed. "He always arrives early to the summit to, as he puts it, establish diplomatic dominance through superior timing." Jake watched the gaudy ship dock. "Wait, is that guy's whole thing just being fancy and making others feel bad about themselves?" "Essentially, yes," Zix confirmed. He once spent 6 hours explaining why his species' method of drinking tea was morally superior to everyone else's. A grin spread across Jake's face, the kind of grin that had preceded some of his most brilliant and chaotic security solutions. "Your Radiance, I have an idea, but I'm going to need your trust, 3 anti-gravity units, and access to the palace's sound system." 2 hours later, Ambassador Vex Pompous strutted into the grand reception hall, his gold-plated exoskeleton gleaming under the crystal chandeliers. He opened his mouth to deliver what was undoubtedly going to be an insufferably elegant greeting, and froze. Queen Zixthalia Mevdoroth III, supreme ruler of the Crystalline Empire, was floating 3 feet off the ground, her crystalline form refracting light in a dazzling display, while earth music, something called also Sprach Zarathustra mixed with, puzzlingly, Space Jam, boomed through the hall. Behind her, the entire royal guard performed a synchronized anti-gravity dance routine that made their ceremonial armor catch the light like a disco ball. "Welcome, Ambassador," Zix said serenely, as if floating mid-air while her guards breakdanced in zero-G was the most natural thing in the universe. "I trust your journey was adequate." The ambassador's mouth opened and closed several times, his carefully prepared speech forgotten. In the corner, partially hidden behind a crystal column, Jake gave Zix a thumbs up while operating what he called the Sick Beats control panel. That set the tone for the entire summit. Every time a diplomat tried to undermine Zix's authority, they found themselves faced with increasingly spectacular displays. When the Nebula Queen attempted to bring up the Princess of Small Rocks incident, Jake orchestrated a spontaneous parade of palace servants performing what he called the greatest hits of Earth flash mobs. The Mechanoid Consortium tried to argue that organic rulers were inefficient, right until Zix revealed that she had learned to solve a Rubik's Cube with her psychic abilities. Jake had spent weeks teaching her, convinced it would come in handy. The cube solved itself while she maintained eye contact with the Mechanoid representative, never breaking her serene smile. By the end of the summit, Zix had secured 3 new trade deals, 5 military alliances, and the grudging respect of even her harshest critics. More importantly, she had done it all while being utterly, unashamedly herself, just with a bit more flair and Earth pop culture references. "I still can't believe you taught the entire diplomatic course to do the wave," K-Rax said to Jake after the last delegates departed. "Bro, unity through synchronized movement is a universal language," Jake replied sagely, before adding, "Also, I may have told them it was a sacred Earth ritual, and refusing to participate would bring 7 years of bad Wi-Fi." Zix, finally allowing herself to relax on her throne, felt a warmth in her crystalline heart. "You know, Jake, when I hired you as a protector, I thought you'd just be preventing assassination attempts. But you've protected something far more important, my right to rule as myself, not as some stuffy traditional monarch." "Oh, thanks, boss," Jake beamed. "Though speaking of assassination attempts, you might want to check your tea. I caught the Nebula Queen's assistant trying to spike it with something earlier. I replaced it with hot sauce though, so we're good." You what Zix's question was cut off by the distinct sound of the Nebula Queen's outraged shriek echoing from the guest quarters, followed by what appeared to be a one-person stampede to the nearest water source. "Like I said, we're good," Jake winked. "Now, who's up for learning the Cupid Shuffle? I think it's time the Crystalline Empire established itself as the galaxy's dance capital." And so, as the 3 moons rose over the Crystal Palace, the unusual tale of friendship between an alien queen and her human protector continued to evolve. There would be more diplomatic crises to navigate, more assassination attempts to thwart, preferably with increasingly elaborate dance numbers, and definitely more cultural misunderstandings to sort out. But one thing was certain, the Crystalline Empire would never be the same, and that was exactly how its queen wanted it. After all, as Jake liked to say, why fit in when you were born to stand out? Especially when standing out involves anti-gravity choreography and strategically deployed hot sauce. 6 months after the legendary summit, now known across the galaxy as the Dance Diplomacy Incident, life in the Crystal Palace had found a new normal. A normal that included weekly Karawat nights, regular prank wars, strictly regulated by Jake's code of hilarious conduct, and the occasional zero-gravity soccer match in the throne room. But all good things face their challenges, and for Queen Zixthalia and her human protector, that challenge came in the form of the ancient Council of Crystal Keepers, the oldest and most traditional faction of her empire. "Your Radiance," wheezed Elder Vitox, his crystalline form practically crackling with disapproval. "We must discuss the unconventional direction the empire has taken." Zix sat on her throne, wearing both her formal royal regalia and a world's best boss baseball cap, a gift from Jake. "Proceed, Elder." "Our sacred traditions are being mockery. Last week, the Royal Guard performed something called YMCA during a ceremonial parade. The royal chef served something called pizza rolls at state dinners, and your human protector, Tox's antennae curled in distress. He keeps referring to our sacred crystal codex as the original space iPad. Before Zix could respond, Jake burst into the throne room, sliding across the polished floor in his socks. He claimed it was tactical mobility. Code red, boss, we've got incoming. Krayrax, who had long since learned to trust Jake's bizarre warnings, immediately activated the palace defenses. Hostile ships? Worse, Jake said grimly. Remember that Nebula Queen? She's back, and she's brought what looks like a whole fleet. But here's the kicker, they're not here to attack. They're here to audit us. Audit. Zix's crystalline form paled slightly. Even she, with all her power, feared the dreaded bureaucratic attack. Yeah, apparently there's some ancient law that says if enough royal houses question your leadership style, they can force an official review of your fitness to rule. Jake scratched his head. Though I gotta say their timing is suspicious. Almost like someone from inside the Empire tipped them off. All eyes turned to Elder Tox, whose guilty antenna twitch gave him away. It too, Toxix? Jake shook his head. Not cool, bro. Not cool. But before anyone could address this betrayal, the Palace AI announced, Aliati. Multiple vessels entering orbit. Classification, bureaucratic with extreme prejudice. The Nebula Queen's hologram appeared in the throne room, her smugness practically radiating through the projection. Queen Zix Thalia, by the power of the ancient laws of proper governance, you are hereby required to demonstrate your worthiness to rule. Failure to do so will result in immediate demotion to Princess of even smaller rocks than previously suggested. Jake looked at Zix, and for the first time since he'd started working there, he was completely serious. Your Radiance, Zix, do you trust me? Always, she replied without hesitation. Cool, because I've got a plan. It's either going to be the most amazing thing ever, or we're all going to end up ruling very small rocks. He turned to Krayrax. Remember that thing we've been practicing in secret? Time to go big or go home. What followed would be remembered in galactic history as the Great Crystal Convergence, though Jake would forever insist on calling it the ultimate space flash mob of destiny. As the Nebula Queen and her entourage of auditors entered the palace, they found not a panic court, but a perfectly orchestrated performance. Every crystalline surface in the palace began to resonate at specific frequencies that Jake had spent months calculating with the help of Earth music theory and Krayrax's scientific expertise. The entire palace became a massive musical instrument, with each crystal singing in perfect harmony. The royal guard, the servants, even the traditionally stuffy council members moved in perfect synchronization, their crystalline forms refracting light in patterns that told the story of the Empire's history. But this wasn't just any performance. Jake had combined the ancient crystal singing traditions of Zix's people with Earth's greatest cultural export, Broadway musicals. The result was a spectacular display that showcased both the Empire's dedication to tradition and its embrace of new ideas. The finale featured Queen Zix herself, rising above the throne room on anti-gravity platforms, her crystalline form resonating with a melody that brought tears to every compound eye in the room. She sang an aria that mixed ancient Crystal Keeper harmonics with what Jake swore was a sick beat from the 90s. When it was over, even the Nebula Queen was speechless. Elder Toxix, who had been accidentally incorporated into the performance as what Jake called background dancers, found himself smiling for the first time in several centuries. Well, the Nebula Queen finally managed. I suppose this demonstrates adequate cultural preservation while embracing necessary evolution. She paused. Also, I find myself wanting to, as the humans say, bust a move. That's the power of music, baby. Jake cheered, before quickly adding, I mean, that's the power of music, your most nebulous majesty. In the aftermath, the ancient Council of Crystal Keepers revised their position. They created a new role, Keeper of New Traditions, with Jake as its first holder, though he insisted on adding Master of Ceremonies to the title. Years later, the Crystalline Empire became known not just for its military might or political power, but as the cultural center of the galaxy. The palace hosted regular fusion festivals where different species shared their art, music, and dance. The Royal Guard's annual performance of Thriller became a must-see event. As for Queen Zix Thalia and her human protector, their friendship had changed them both. Zix learned that true strength sometimes came wrapped in Hawaiian shirts and bad puns. Jake discovered that even the most rigid-seeming traditions could bend without breaking. On quiet evenings, when the three moons hung low in the sky, you might find them on the palace's observation deck. The Queen of the Crystalline Empire and her human best friend, sharing Earth snacks and alien delicacies, planning their next great adventure, or just enjoying the comfortable silence of true friendship. "Hey Zix," Jake would say, "want to hear a space joke?" And even though his jokes were terrible, especially the space ones, she would always say yes. Because that's what friends do. Even if one of them is a crystalline alien queen and the other is a human who once fought off an assassination attempt with nothing but a rubber chicken and a well-timed "that's what she said" joke. In the end, it turned out that the best protection wasn't just about preventing harm. It was about bringing joy, embracing change, and knowing when to take life seriously and when to dance like nobody's watching, even though, as Jake often pointed out, in a palace made of crystals, somebody was always watching. And so, the story of the alien queen and her unlikely protector became legend, told across the galaxy as proof that sometimes the best partnerships aren't the ones you expect, but the ones that make you laugh, help you grow, and maybe teach you how to moonwalk along the way.